Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you happen to be watching this. I want to share again from Revelation, and we're going to be looking at chapter 12 this week, and we're talking about Satan's birthday. Now, you might not even be able to put those two things in the same sentence, but let's just take a look at birthday parties that we see. I like this dog. Happy birthday, the party time. I'm not sure what that is he's drinking with the straw, but you know, it works. I just felt sorry for this poor dog. Poor guy can't even see, but he's got party hats everywhere. You said everybody would be there, and that cat with the black balloon, and I'm kind of frightened, to be perfectly honest with you. This was my favorite. Here's maybe the Aflac duck, who knows. Private birthday party, especially with all this stuff going on. May I bring some friends? Notice all those buddies back there. So that's kind of what we think about in terms of birthday parties and who's going to be there. And of course, with everything that's going on, people are trying to keep the numbers down and all of that. But we're going to be talking about something else today. In Revelation chapter 12, verse 1, we find this: a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth. Another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous red dragon, 7 heads, 10 horns, and 7 crowns on his heads. The tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them to the earth. The dragon stood in front of the woman who was about to give birth, so that it might devour her child the moment he was born. Now, as we think about this, it becomes pretty obvious that the dragon here is Satan. And we'll talk about some of the other symbolisms here in a few minutes. But I wanted us to take a look at how we picture things in our lives. Since Satan, God, Christ, biblical characters didn't stand around for photos in those days, we don't have a real accurate picture of what people look like. Some of the pictures of Jesus you see, he probably didn't look like that too much. But so when we think of Satan, that's kind of where we are. A little devil, a little cute guy that appears on one shoulder with the angel on the other, and people have kind of moral discussions back and forth with it. But we find this one seems to be a little more mad, so we'll try that. That is coming close. But if you want to be biblically accurate, that's what the woman was watching. And we see here 6 heads. We see just a horrible, horrible creature that is standing right in front of her. She's about ready to give birth, feeling very vulnerable, and then you got this thing standing right there. She gave birth to a son, a male child, who will rule all the nations with an iron scepter. And her child was snatched up to God and to his throne. The woman fled into the wilderness to a place prepared for her by God, that she might be taken care of for 1260 days. Then the war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. But he was not strong about it, and they lost their place in heaven. I'm going to take a break here and just make sure we have the right pronouns with the right antecedents. The he here is the dragon, and he is fighting with Michael, archangel, and he, the dragon, the devil, and his followers, so to speak, have lost their place in heaven. The great dragon was hurled down, the ancient serpent called the devil, or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled into the earth and his angels with him. Now, I just want you to stop and think about that for a minute. The next time you're going through a trial or we're going through a difficulty, you know, tomorrow with Thanksgiving, it may be, it definitely will be a smaller a celebration for you. I know it's going to be for our family. It's going to be good, and we're looking forward to it, but it's not the huge crowd that we've normally done in years past. And if you're worried about what's going on in the world, I want us to just remember that imagery, this big, horrible, hideous dragon, 6 heads, and it's being hurled to the earth, and his angels with him. Chapter 12, verse 10 picks it up and he says, I heard a loud voice in heaven say, now have come the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Messiah. For the accuser of our brothers and sisters who accuses them before our God day and night has been hurled down. They triumphed over him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. They did not love their lives so much as to shrink from death. Talking about the martyrs that we've talked about before. Therefore rejoice, you heavens and them who dwell in them, but woe to the earth and the sea, because the devil has gone down to you. He is filled with fury because he knows that his time is short. When the dragons saw that he had been hurled down to the earth, he pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child. The woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle so that she might fly to the place prepared for her in the wilderness, where she would be taken care of for a time, times, and half a time out of the serpent's reach. Now, let me just take a pause here again, and I want us to continue to have that imagery. And a lot of places that you read about the book of Revelation, the passage I just read, people are going to get really wrapped up on, okay, that time, and when's that going to be, and how long that's going to be. Candidly, we're missing the point of what's going on here. The point is that Satan hurled down the earth, wanting to go after the woman, and she is taken up. She's given wings like eagles, and she flies off, and she is protected. Then from the mouth of the serpent spewed water like a river to overtake the woman and sweep her away with the torrent. But the earth helped the woman by opening its mouth and swallowing in the river that the dragon had spewed out of his mouth. Then the dragon was enraged at the woman and went off to wage war against the rest of her offspring. Guess who that would be? That would be us, right? That is us. Those who keep God's commands and hold fast their testimony about Jesus. So we see this fantastic picture being played out. And we see, as often happens in apocalyptic literature, you find things that are happening in the past, but you also find things that are happening present and future, all seeming like they're going to happen at the same time. Now, let me show you how this works. When I was a kid, and maybe you do too, I had teachers that were just fascinated by timelines. You remember a timeline? Here we can do it up on a printed screen, and in my day it was more of the chalkboard. And so the teacher would go to the chalkboard and she'd start that timeline here, and it might be the beginning of time. Usually it was in a history class, so maybe it's going to be BC or AD, and then maybe to the current time, or here's the Civil War, it starts here and it ends here, and then putting some of the events there in sequence so that we can remember how history is happening. So here's a timeline that we would be used to seeing, and I got it a little small there, I apologize for that, but it has creation, it has the resurrection, and then it has the second coming. And that makes perfect sense, right? That's how the Bible is. The Bible starts with Genesis, the beginning, the creation, 2 different accounts to start off, goes all the way through the Old Testament. The Gospels talk about Jesus Christ and him being the child in this story in Revelation, who is born and will rule with an iron scepter, which is just a wonderful image. As you look at that dragon, we know the one who has conquered that dragon. And I'm not sneaking a peek at the end of the book. We all know how this works. But anyway, we have the resurrection and we have the second coming. Now, that's a great timeline. And it's one we've maybe seen in Sunday school and study. I certainly saw variations of it in Bible college and seminary. But here's something that we really need to remember, and I want you to focus on this. Okay, this is the timeline we should remember, and I'm not apologizing for the fonts here. You'll notice creation, resurrection, and second coming. But notice who is above and beyond and on either side of all of that: God. And he is the one who orchestrates it. He is the one that puts it into motion. He is the one that controls the wrath. He is the one that offers protection, also offers perception, and I'm trying to say those words at the same time. But notice here, God is over history. And here's the part that always boggles my mind, and I'm thinking it might be for you too. And the beauty of it is that we don't have to understand all of this totally, but we accept it by faith. So we see here creation, the beginning of time, and God is before the beginning. The Bible starts off by saying, in the beginning, God created. So creation is an act by God who is already there. Well, who created God? Nobody created God. He is the creator. He is the ultimate. He is the Alpha, the Omega, the beginning and the end. Greek alphabet there a little bit. And so there's creation. And then we have the timeline that we're familiar with in Scripture. We've been studying in Revelation. And then we come up to the second coming and the end of time, and that'll be covered in the next few chapters. We'll have some fun looking at that. But then God is also there after the end of time on this earth. We'll get a new heaven and a new earth. We'll talk about more about that in the next few weeks. But notice where God is. He's over all, through all, and around it all. And why? Because he controls it. And because he controls it, he is the one that we can pray to, we can go to, we can be comforted by. God is right here. He is, and I don't understand how God can be right here on this stage in an empty sanctuary with Rob and I as we're putting this together. And that same God is in your living room or wherever you happen to be watching this. God is there. God with us. We're getting ready to think about Christmas here in the next few weeks. Kind of a wild year, isn't it? But Emmanuel, God with us. Great song, great truth. And I love this end graphic because the woman is giving birth to Christ. She is the church. Now, that's where the analogy kind of breaks down. The church didn't give birth to Christ. It was actually the other way around. Christ started the church. First century, Book of Acts, day of Pentecost, the church forms. And we see, though, that there's been persecution of God's people in Jerusalem and in Israel, throughout the whole Old Testament. Every Bible character that you can think of has had Satan whispering, telling lies, being deceitful. He tried to get Moses to be discouraged and depressed. And how are you supposed to lead a nation of Israel? And Satan was looking at Elijah and all the kings and all the prophets that were coming there. King David was overcome with a temptation, and he could have turned to God, and God would have helped him through that time, but he didn't. And again, he was like, I'm in charge, I'm the king, I can go after Bathsheba, I can have her husband Uriah killed. No. Satan's message has never changed. It's the same thing that he told Adam and Eve in the very first words. Do you remember that? Do you remember when he said, God didn't really say that you shouldn't eat of that fruit, that you will surely die. You're not going to die. the first lie that was told is that Satan knows better than God. And we have a world culture that says if you put your faith in the government or you put your faith in certain people, and I don't care what your politics are here, I really don't care if you're Republican or Democrat, it doesn't matter. If we start putting all of our faith in one person or one party or one situation, we're doomed. Why? Because I have, on the street, I live on Corral Court, pull out the end of the court, there's a Tolliver. I always turn left to Tolliver to go to the church. And as soon as I turn left, there's a neighbor there. He likes to grow sunflowers every summer. Been enjoying watching those for the 17 years we've lived there. But he had a sign on his lawn. I had to pray that I would be able to withstand temptation so I didn't steal it. And it said, Jesus 2020. Vote God 2020. And I thought, oh, that's the election I can get behind. That's the political party I can get excited about. That is who is going to solve the problems of the world. The coronavirus, division, liberals on one end, conservatives on the other end, and all the stuff that's going on. God has made sense of it. It's right here in His Word. Start here and then approach your politics. Don't go the other way around. And so we see that Christ is born here and that Satan has been tempting mankind from Adam and Eve all the way to us and all the way to the end of time. Now at the resurrection, Satan's power was limited. So he can't destroy the church. He's tried many times. But you know, it's been a blessing if you read the book of Acts carefully and you read the church, the greater the persecution, the bigger the church became. And that the church was stronger because of that persecution. I remember when I was just starting in Bible college, there was a gal in our youth group that I had taken a liking to. She didn't feel the same way, but you know, that's the way it goes. But anyway, I went off to Bible college and she went off to University of California at Davis to become an engineer. Very smart, scientific mind. And I remember, I think it was one of the breaks that we came home, Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever, and I remember talking with her and we were discussing faith. And she made the claim, and I think she's right. She says, you know what, I think living as a Christian on a secular campus takes more faith than you're living in a Christian dormitory at a Bible college. And you know what? I had to agree with her. She was right. Why? Because, hey, we could skate along there spiritually. Hey, we're reading the Bible every day. We had to read a whole book of the Old Testament, one per day during the Old Testament introduction class. Same with the New Testament introduction class. So I was reading the Bible like crazy. But Debbie had to just carve out some time between her engineering schedule and her studies and all of that to carve out time to let the scripture speak to him. It wasn't a textbook for her, but it was a life guide. And it was fascinating when we had that discussion. And so, as we come today, we're going to, we struggle, don't we? But we know God is in control. He's in control of this coronavirus because He has protected His people throughout the years of pestilence and storms and plagues and all this evil stuff. And He is with us right now. And He gives us love and guidance. Now that is a party. That is something we can celebrate. That is what we can be thankful for. Please, and this is my pet peeve, I'm sorry, do not call tomorrow Turkey Day. Do not do that. Why? I hate that term. Here's why. Because, yeah, maybe we have turkey, maybe we have ham, I don't care if you have pizza. Wouldn't be a bad idea. But here's the thing. It's a day that even the most avowed atheist would understand the idea of being thankful for something. And most people, I think you could pin down and say, what is something you're thankful for? Well, maybe my job, or my family, my spouse, my kids, my parents, whatever. Doesn't matter where they are in Christ, they can still come up with something to be thankful about. And that's the beauty of the holiday tomorrow. And for us, as we're reading this account in Revelation, we have so much to be thankful for, that the victory is won. The battle's over. The election's over. Not the physical one we just suffered through. Jesus Christ is King, and he is Lord. I want to close today with a true story. And this really spoke to me, and I'm hoping that it will speak to you. Story about a man who endured the collapse of some of the foundations on which he had built his life. The gentleman was a politician, a member of the New York State Assembly. One day a telegram arrived in his office in Albany. It contained a single 3-word sentence: "Come home now." Not long before, his wife had given birth to a baby girl. He had gone back to work thinking all was well, mom was doing well, baby's going well. He goes back to Albany, to the capital. The young man took the next train to his home in New York City. As he walked through the door, his brother greeted him with a strange comment: "There's a curse on his house." Rushing up to the bedroom, he found his wife Alice dying from unforeseen complications of childbirth. And this is a historical story, I need to remind you. So they didn't have the fancy hospitals and care units like they do here. Found his wife Alice dying from complications of childbirth. He sat and he held her and could be heard pleading to God, "Let her live, let her live." Sometime during the night, a family member intruded on their solitude, whispering in his ear, "If you want to see your mother before she dies, come downstairs." The man left his very sick wife, walked down a flight of stairs to his mother's room, and then he held his mother until she died at 3 a.m. Immediately he returned to his wife's bedside, where he kept vigil until she also died at 2 o'clock that afternoon, 11 hours later. As heavy grief descended on the household, occasionally there would be heard the cry of his infant daughter, who now was without a mother and a grandmother. 2 days later, identical rosewood caskets were carried into New York's Fifth Avenue Presbyterian Church. Friends observed that this man was in a dazed, stunned state. They wondered if he would ever recover, and he indeed did. For the prayer that he was praying was answered in a completely different way than what he thought. And he would marry again. Professionally, he served as the Assistant Secretary of the Navy, Governor of New York, we've been hearing about that lately, haven't we? And President of the United States. His name, Theodore Roosevelt. And he would know many other difficult experiences of disappointment. And this is something he wrote for the benefit of those who must live for a season through the tumbling of this foundational stones of life. He says, "It is not the critic who counts or the one who points out how strong the man is who stumbled, or the doer of deeds who could have done them better. The credit belongs to the person who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust, sweat, blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes up short again and again, who knows the great enthusiasm, the great devotions, and spends in himself a worthy cause, who knows best in the end of the triumph of high achievement And at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that this place shall never be without these cold, timid souls who know neither victory or defeat. Teddy Roosevelt, man of faith and determination, and lived through a horrendous series of events in just one day, actually. Today, where are we? Well, we're in the midst of a virus, we're in the midst of unemployment, we're in the midst of all sorts of craziness and nonsense. And we have people that are trying to explain it in different ways and different causes. But I would just venture this and say these words with me right now. God is in control. Say them again right where you are, your living room, wherever you're watching this. God is in control. We think of those wonderful words of the Apostle Paul where he says, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. He's writing that from a jail cell to the church at Philippi, and he was under a great deal of stress and turmoil, being imprisoned for being faithful. And we can do all things through who? Christ. This child that was born, raised, grew up without sin, became our sin so that we could become the righteousness of God in Jesus Christ as he was resurrection. And he lives through us today. God is in control. Now, I don't know about you, but that's something worth celebrating and worth really having a party. May God bless you.